Oh, let's see. Let's start to how did it disappear? There it is. Nobody on yet? Okay, we have a few people on. That's good. Hey, everybody. Hopefully you can hear this. Hey, Matt. What's up, dude? What's up with you? Today, so it may not go super long. How's the sound going? Going okay? Let me know if the sound's okay. Dooey da. A little Swedish anyway. All right, cool. So we're going to do a Steve Cropper type of lesson today. I've got my Stratty type of guitar out on here. And of course, if you know Steve Cropper, I'm a huge fan of Steve Cropper. I'm a huge fan of that sort of era of music, the 60s R&B type stuff. He was the guitarist with Stax, and he's the guy who brought us such things like Soul Man, the guitar there, totally iconic on that one, using some techniques there. Also, this one right here. The Eddie Floyd, I think it's called But It's All Right, or It's All Right. That's a great one. Or how about this one? All right. So anyway, there's lots and lots and lots of Steve Cropper songs or techniques. And at least for me, he's kind of a transition between the Hendrixy stuff of like the and the Joe Messina type of Motown, right? Which is a lot straighter. So he's a little bit funky, but he also adds some things in there. So we want to just show a couple of these techniques that he adds in and kind of just describe some of them as how they're used in those various songs. So the most obvious, the ones I want to talk about are very briefly triads. Everybody and his brother talks about triads. This is kind of how I learned on how to use them, was through songs like this and Motown songs and Stax songs using triads. So that's the first one. The second thing is sixths, which you're probably familiar with. And a third one is fourths, which you may not be familiar with. He used fourths in a different way. He was kind of like the first guy that I ever heard that was using sliding fourths. So triads. Just briefly, this this one with Soul Man, right? he was often coming up with lines like that. And a lot of Motown guys did that too. So they were using either the top 3 strings, which we were doing there, or they're using the middle 3 strings, which are also quite effective. That's another way of doing it. So those are just usually major or minor triads. And so, you know, this is a lesson in and of itself. You could really expand your playing and expand your abilities both to play backup and solos if you focus more on triads, that's for sure. No question about it. It's an easy way to sound really cool. I particularly like the triads on the 3rd, 4th, and on the 4, 3, and 2 strings. To learn kind of those and harmonize them into a major scale. We'll do a kind of a full lesson on that someday, but those strings 4, 3, and 2 are perfect because you're not going to step on a singer, and you're not going to step on a bassist, and you're probably not going to play all over the piano player if there is one as well. So those are really great strings, and you can harmonize those into sort of a major scale. And it always sounds good if you do that. If you look at Soul Man, that's essentially all it is. The 1 chord, and then he goes from the 3 to the 2 to the 1. I know he actually does a major on that instead of the 3 chord, instead of the minor. But that's it. I mean, it's a way to just make that first chord, which is just a G, much more interesting. All right, so that's the first thing. The second thing, and this is the one that you're probably more familiar with, are 6ths. So we'll take just a little more time with that. Now, 6ths are just, it's a mini chord. It's a chord with 2 notes, but they're separated by 6 notes of the scale in between. So, for example, let's do this one in C. All right, I don't know if you can see that keyboard, but fretboard. Anyway, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if I want to do a one above that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's notes that are in the scale that are separated by 6. They're basically, there's 6 notes there. And what's cool about those is that they're on 2 separate strings, so you get this open effect that's there, and like you can either play them on the 3rd and the 1st, or you can play them on the 4th and the 2nd, or you can play them on the 5th and the 3rd, etc. The most common ones are on the 1st and the 2nd and the 3rd, like this one, like the Soul Man. Right? That's the Soul Man lick. Those are 6ths. But either on the 1st and 3rd or on the 2nd and the 4th. You heard me playing that in the opening. And there's a couple of different ways of playing them also with your picking hand. You can play a pick and fingers. Sorry, I didn't mean to, flip anybody off. I'm just playing on the 3rd. I'm playing with my pick like this, and then up with my middle finger on the 1st string. And that's sort of a country-ish sound, right? So you've heard that, certainly. It's a very country sort of sound. Actually, Jimmy Page uses that in Heartbreaker, if you listen for it, right before he goes into the solo. He uses a line like that using 6ths. Or you can block with your left hand, block out that middle string, and that's a good effect, and then play with just a strum on your right hand. That's a good effect. Sometimes it's easier than, or sometimes it's harder than it seems. Both of those techniques are good to know, and it's good to know those 6th shapes. Usually the way I think about it on the first 2 strings is there's one shape like this, right, which is the top note is 1 lower than the bottom note, and then there's one where they're all lined up like this. that kind of stuff. All right. So those are 6. What Cropper, I think, added was he added a lot of the slides into them. So if you listen to Soul Man, he does that, right? Which is different than the brown-eyed girl type of thing. Much straighter and kind of straight-laced, whereas Cropper's a little loose, which is kind of cool. The last thing I want to show you is fourths, a great way to kind of also spice up things. And Hendrix played a lot of these later, but you hear this sort of thing in R&B, classic R&B, like listen, check this out over like a open E. You've heard those, right? Well, anyway, Cropper was the first person I ever heard kind of do that. That kind of thing. And those are fourths. Those are notes that are separated by 4, not 6. So for E, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And this fourth would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And you hear jazz guys play this kind of stuff. You don't want to get too carried away with it, but those slides are really way cool. You hear it if you listen to the song Allison, you hear the player doing that. I think it's John McPhee playing this all the time. That kind of stuff. It's really neat. Anyway, give it a shot and give it a listen, right? So if you listen to Soul Man or Knock on Wood, Eddie Floyd, or you know, any of those classic ones, I'm gonna make a comeback. But it's all right. Dock of the Bay. If you listen to Dock of the Bay, he's doing a lot of 6. Anyway, all that stuff is really, I really dig that music. So anyway, happy to share that kind of stuff with you. If you'd like lessons on these, I'm also good. I'm happy to do those. They're really fun. And when I used to play in a band, probably the most successful band that I played in was a Motown band, JD and the Motown Revolution. We had one of the guys who was a part-time member of the Dell Vikings. And he was the front man. He got lots of jobs, and that was fun. I used to put in a ton of those sorts of licks throughout the songs, so a lot of fun. All right. So anyway, hope you enjoyed that one. Let's take a few questions here. Yeah, Cropper played a telly. I know I got to get a telly. So who's that 3-card Monty? Yeah, I know Cropper played the telly. Hey, give me a break, okay? This is the first Strat. I know it's not a Fender Strat. This is the first Strat I've ever fell in love with. And really digging this guitar. I've never liked Strats at all. I think it's maybe because of the 25.5-inch scale. My hands are not super big. But I've always been partial to Gibsons. But I like the single coil sound. I like a Tully. Tully's pretty awesome. The only thing I've got is that sort of that love child, the Reverend, which is a mix between a Tully and a Strat, or a Tully and a Les Paul. It's got a tunematic bridge, but it's got the Tully setup, which is pretty neat. I love that guitar, that Reverend. But this one, I can't put this guitar down. This is my favorite guitar right now. So hopefully it will be. This is a Chuck Thornton. I don't know if you can see that. Let me take this off here. This is a Chuck Thornton guitar. Now Chuck is this is definitely a boutique Strat. You can see, look at that carve on that headstock, pretty amazing, and a bird's eye on the neck. That's pretty incredible. And then there's some other features on this one. I'm not in love with the black pickup covers, but it's all right. Check this out. Look at the carved body. That's pretty amazing. Most comfortable body I've ever had on a Strat, that's for sure. And then on the back, look at that neck. It's not a bolt-on. So anyway, it wasn't cheap, but I picked it up used, so it was a happy find. Let's see. Oh yeah, Reverend Jetstream. Yeah, all Reverends are like really underrated. I almost picked up one of those Pete Anderson, this mix between a Telly and a Strat, the East Sider. It's Pete Anderson's. He grew up like a block away from where I grew up too. Of course, we didn't know each other. He's a little bit older than I am, I think. But anyway, the East Sider is that's why I like that guitar. Yeah, Elvis Costello, Sergeant Mike. Yeah, yeah. I did a lesson a long time ago on Allison. On Allison, maybe I have to do some on those fills. Yeah. Let's see. I'm sure you were in a band. What genre did you guys play? So I just kind of told you I was in a Motown band. That was probably the most successful band I was ever in. We had tons of jobs. I mean, I grew up in Detroit, as you probably know, but we had tons of jobs in Detroit at that time, which was throughout the 80s and early 90s. And so that was awesome. But I played in a lot of wedding bands and stuff like that too. And that was more classic rock. I never did the metal thing. I never got into the big hair. And then I did a little bit of jazz when I was in Detroit, but I was terrible at it. I did more like swing. I've been in some swing, like Django type of swing music. So that kind of stuff I like a lot. I'd love to get into like a jump blues band. I love that kind of music. And then in the 90s, I played in the late 90s and throughout, like, say, 2005, I played in a ton of bluegrass sessions. So I played exclusively acoustic for about 10 years. I didn't even touch an electric. I don't know what was wrong with me, but that's what I did. I played in bluegrass bands, and the Mountain Dusky Gang was our band. I did most of the vocals on that one too, so that was fun. I played mando. That's where I learned how to play mandolin and some other stuff. So that was a lot of fun. Great stuff. Ever play the Easttown Theater? I did not ever play the Easttown Theater. All right. Yeah, Mitch, I'm with you. I'm not into metal. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I was exposed to, the interesting thing is I had a cousin who was very, very influential to me, who he loved the Beatles and Elton John. That was his stuff, and the Who, and to a lesser extent Zeppelin. And so that's the music I grew up in, and I had to hear. I was very influenced by him, and so it was only after that I started being exposed to stuff like Zappa or Allman Brothers. It was only after I kind of got out of that sphere of influence. I mean, he was the best man at my wedding, so it's not like I left his influence, but broadened it in anyway. Yeah. Motown's really awesome. I really love that music. I had the great pleasure of meeting the king of the backbeat, Joe Messina, once, and a friend of mine who I worked for at the time, he was a jazz musician. He took me to a jazz jam in Detroit. I was by far the worst player in the room. And the one that everybody listened to was Joe Messina, and he was a guitar player. He's the guitarist on almost all the Motown, or he's one of the guitarists on almost all the Motown stuff. And he played, a little trivia here, he was a guitarist on the Soupy Sales show. That incredible jazz player, but of course on Motown, he played stuff that was really simple. And but he didn't play guitar for like 20 years. He only played harmonica. So that night he played jazz harmonica like Toots Thielman. It was really pretty amazing. And funny funny thing is, you know, everybody was like really dumping on me. Like jazz musicians can be that way. That's, by the way, that's one, I think, better thing that I found, at least my experience with bluegrass musicians. They don't piss on each other. They're just there to have fun and to play together, and they're incredible musicians. And jazz players can be kind of harsh to each other. But Joe wasn't. Joe was very encouraging to me, and he would say, "Hey, man, that sounds really good," even though I clearly didn't. I played too many notes. I think that was the main thing. I played too much. That's why I love this. I love being able to identify with this method of only playing a few notes at a time, or triads or dyads or sixths or fourths, really adding little bits to the whole show instead of taking it over like you do in, say, a rock song where there's just a guitar, a bass, and drums. All right. Okay. Well, hey, it would be awesome if you had, if you have any questions. I think I'm gonna wrap it up in a few minutes here. But if you have any questions, I can try to answer them now for sure. But if you have any questions, you can always shoot me an email or leave a comment on here, and we'll address it the next time. We'll address it the next time, and when we do the lesson. So anyway, I'm kind of liking these live streams. I find it's fun to prepare for them, and I like the interaction a lot. So future tab for fourths and sixths. Yeah. I have a lesson that's out there on fourths. I think it's called Jimi Hendrix and John Mayer type of play or something like that. So I'll put a link in the description on this, but it doesn't have the tab. So I'll have to do one on fourths and then maybe one on sixths. I think I did one on sixths a long time ago. It was more blues related than anything. Am I still using OBS? I generally don't use OBS. Sometimes I do it for like rants. I use a different type of. I use actually a. I'm trying to remember. It's not sort of a mainstream software usually. I mean, this I'm just using YouTube software, YouTube's camera thing. Well, I can't remember the name of the camera. Anyway, it's just the camera software, and I just plug everything into that, and it comes out synchronous. But OBS, I did learn how to get it. I haven't learned how to take out those little glitches. There's always these little glitches in the videos when I use OBS, and I haven't figured out how to get rid of those. But other than that, I figured out how to sync everything, so that was good. What was the monster on Sue's thing? Yeah. No, Fang. Fang was the monster on Soupy Sales. Fang. Yeah, those are great bits. Yeah, Fang, and I don't know. That's why I grew up with Soupy Sales and the Marx Brothers growing up. Blacktooth. I don't know if it was Blacktooth. All right. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, so leave me your suggestions for what we can cover next time, and also leave me your suggestions for songs that you want me to do. As always, I mean, I'm so far behind on the list, of course, but so far behind. So it's just hard to keep up. I've been traveling a lot, so I'm kind of off of my traveling stint for a few weeks. I'm going to be home, so hopefully I'll get some videos done. That's the idea. Blues. Okay, got it. Gotcha, brother. Blues. Yeah, we'll do blues. I got a bunch of requests for stuff off of the Layla album and stuff off of like John Mayall, both Peter Green and Eric Clapton. So we'll do a few of those for sure. Those are always fun. Oh, Allman Brothers, right? Of course, Midnight Rider, 335. Got it. Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I should probably do Melissa and Make My Wife Happy too. All right. Did you do still? I know I haven't done Still Got the Blues. You mean the that was from Mitch. I haven't done Still Got the Blues. You mean the Gary Moore? Oh yeah. I should. I mean, that one's super fun to play. I did one blues that was kind of like that, and people said, "Hey, is that the? It sound like Gary Moore." I'm like, "Oh, I wish," but yeah, we could do that one. That one's great. He's one of the. I mean, it's what a loss. A guy died, but he's definitely one of the best players out there. I mean, he had all the technical chops, but he chose not to use them a lot, which was great. I really like players who do that. I really like players who do that. Oh, hey, I have an idea. I thought the live stream might be a good way of doing. A couple of years ago, I said I was going to do this scientific study on best guitar players or whatever. I never got enough data or never got enough people to participate to do it. But I thought maybe that would be a fun discussion, is to talk about sort of like who are my top 10 influences or people that I think are the best, maybe excluding some things like classical and metal and that, and then, get your live opinion. That might be a fun one. Oh, well, anyway, we could do that. Tramp groove. All right. Training tips of fear. Okay. All right. I saw this. Sergeant Mike said, eat training tips trying to figure out Brian Auger's happiness around the bend. It's good to try from other instruments, but I'm stuck. Okay. So I think that's the happiness around the bend. I'm not familiar with that, so I'll look it up, Sergeant Mike. You always have great suggestions. I don't take you up on them enough. I feel bad about that. I think you asked for a Stevie Ray thing a while back, and I listened to it. I'm like, yeah, that's really good. It's going to take a lot of work, but it's good for sure. So I appreciate that. All right, Stax, Tramp by Otis Redding. Yeah, well, there's a lot of great stuff from Otis and that. So Tramp, okay, I've heard it. I've got it. Okay. All right, gang. Well, I'm at the 27-minute mark here. I want to thank you all for coming to the live show and appreciate you staying on, and love all the comments and that. Cool. Yeah, I can see, I don't have all the young kids for sure. I mean, I think we all grew up in the era where if somebody had a tattoo, it said Mother or U.S. Navy, right? It didn't have, it wasn't written in Chinese characters that the person didn't even know what they meant. All right. Okay. All right. We'll see you, gang, and we'll have another video for next week. And hope you enjoyed this one. Hope you get some stuff out of the sixths and that, and play some Steve Cropper. He's one of the best. All right. See you, folks.